Welcome to this week's episode 10 of Beneath the Grandstand. It is official. Alex, we've hit double digits.
There's no going back now.
We're here. So, it's exciting to be back for another week. I say exciting. Exciting usually means a positive reason. It's always positive to have conversation. It's always positive to see you and talk to you. So I appreciate that. But, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, so news isn't always positive in everyone's world, and news in the sports world, there's obviously still a lot up in the air, and when things will happen. Leagues are starting to take a little bit of shape on the professional side. College sports are still up in the air somewhat, but it feels like more people are saying they think football is going to happen, which is in most cases a good sign for sports. On the running side, Boston Marathon was canceled, which they had rescheduled the date. A lot of people had hoped, hey, it's going to be a big marathon season in the fall, but it looks like those dominoes are starting to fall in some way. And then back on the college side, and speaking of dominoes, is more college programs are starting to cut sports. And specifically in the running and track and field side. Most recently to join Akron and Central Michigan was App State. Right up the road, we ran at App State a few times while I was at Clemson, and most recently Brown University announced the cut of their whole men's program from cross country and track and field. So, Alex, as you're seeing this news, I don't know what's going through your mind, but it seems like things. There's right when you get positives on one side, there's still kind of a negative kicker that comes in.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're kind of in this time that it almost gives administrations the agency and the openness to make these decisions, and it's almost looked at in I think from a larger public scale, it's like, you're making these cuts for budget regions, and we get it, we understand. And I worry about how liberally that some the more departments that cut sports, I worry that more will feel the agency to follow suit. We're probably not done seeing departments being cut until we kind of right the ship on what collegiate athletics is going to be over the next couple of years. I think, and it seems like the NCAA is loosening the rules a little bit and giving a little bit of grace for what qualifies a school as a Division I program. And when that starts to happen, that's when I get really worried, is when they're open to letting schools drop below that initial 14 sport threshold or whatever. That's when I get worried. And not just for track and field. I mean, I get worried for, our friends in wrestling, our friends in swimming, our friends in golf, tennis, all those sports. I think everybody is still, super nervous. And it's totally valid at this point. I don't think we're quite out of the woods yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when the coronavirus first happened here in the U.S. and sports started to cancel, it was like this wave of sports and leagues that followed after the first, right? And I think it was probably when the NBA suspended games, and it was like this huge rush of NCAA and basketball tournaments. All these things started going, and I think that as things have started to open up, in some ways, you're hoping to see one sport kind of plant the flag in the ground saying, this is it, and we're doing it. And really it takes them to actually do it to start. And you're hoping that those dominoes in some ways will fall, right? And I say you hope because I think in the back of all our minds, you're hoping for a day where things come back to quote unquote normal, or things start picking up, right? There's a lot behind that. But point is that we're not seeing that yet. We're not seeing everyone follow suit. We're seeing some people make steps in a direction to come back. We're seeing some people take steps in a direction to never come back, right? And so it's still very much a gray area. And so, we've had two really good conversations, Beth Alford Sullivan and Dave Smith on the college side, of this whole thing, and it's generated a lot of discussion, and I know you and I have directly got a lot of feedback from those, and so we thought it was valuable to to have that conversation, because there are a lot of questions out there, and I think it based on the feedback we've gotten, one, there's questions, but two, it's just the conversations are helpful. It's opening eyes and ears to what's going on, how people are looking at the world, what directions are being considered, and so we wanted to continue that. And so today's guest was one of the guys that actually reached out to us real quickly after some of our past college conversations, and had a lot of insight and things that he thought could help kind of contribute around these conversations. And so we wanted to get him on, and that's Joe Franklin. He's head coach at New Mexico, out in Albuquerque, two-time national champ there with the Lobos in 2015 and 2017 on the women's cross country side. But Joe's like, Alex, we've talked to him many years, especially around Colas time and cross country, so dialed in on the qualification system and really the ins and outs of NCAA at the track and field level. Super knowledgeable guy that has, I think, probably saved our butts a few times on Colas calculations.
Totally.
What do you say?
Totally. I mean, Joe is the antithesis. I mean, he's the guy, when we talk about beneath the grandstand, like when you hear a rumor, that's the guy I'm going to. Joe knows. And Joe's in the know. And he's in that kind of that circle of coaches that we lean on to have a real perspective on something, and to have the historical knowledge behind it. Why are we doing this? And so totally, like if you are in NCAA coaching circles, Joe Franklin, and exactly why we're talking to him today.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's welcome today's guest onto the show. All right, Joe Franklin, coming to us from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Welcome to the show, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Great. Life's good.
You told me this is your first time speaking in 11 weeks. Is that true?
That's actually not true, but maybe to like other people. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had to get some throat lozenges to get my vocal cords ramped up. However, I have talked a lot the last couple of weeks because I've been fired up, so I've had a lot of phone calls.
Well, it's good. Our show is about allowing people that are fired up to let the fire out. So hopefully we allow you to do that today. So before we jump into things, Joe, just how are things in Albuquerque for you and the program, and yeah, what's the latest?
All's good here. It's sunny and upper 80s like it usually is. We just have this pesky virus floating around. So restaurants are just now starting to open. I think they opened yesterday to outside dining. They opened Monday to in-person dining. So we're slowly back to what used to be. It's been pretty calm here. We have some significant issues in the northwestern part of the state. But other than that, it's been, there's been some ups and downs, but comparatively we're in a good spot.
And everyone on your program and staff is, how's it working through things right now with everyone remotely?
Good. We just text every now and then. Right now there's no answers. So when people have questions, there's literally no answers. So I can't tell you what all is going to look like. I can't tell you what tomorrow is going to look like because we don't have any answers. And when we're in such routines for me the last 27 years, it's a little bit unnerving because there is no end goal, because you don't know when you're going to start and what that goal could even be. So we just text and talk, and sometimes we show up 12 feet apart in the office when our office is only about 14 feet, so we're right up against the walls. So it's good. Life's good. No risks here.
Joe, you said something about really there's not really a goal right now, and I think for many programs out there right now, part of the goal through this time is to continue to remain a program at your university. And I say that as a few schools have recently announced some cuts: Akron, Central Michigan, App State, most recently Brown University just cut their men's program. just curious to get your take on the landscape right now, and are you surprised at all, and do you see this continuing in a bigger way as time goes on?
Well, we went through this 2.5 years ago at New Mexico, so I'm very aware of what's going on and what's happening. I do see this continuing. I do see this being a landscape change. We have this potential athletics financial major problem, and there's going to have to be decisions made. And for those that are saying, hey, you need to cut some of the bigger sports, we have to be in a reality and realize that's not going to happen. It won't happen. And for us to think that it will, we're naive if we do that. So and I've been kind of preaching this for a while and kind of falls on deaf ears. It's time that we become proactive. Make sure our administrations and our people that are making decisions can make educated decisions. People are only as the information that are given to them. So what we as cross-country and track coaches throughout the country need to do is be able to put data in front of administrators. Because there are going to be decisions. At some point, it's going to start happening at the Power Five. We're already seeing it at the mid-majors. Just saw it in an Ivy League school that I don't know what Brown's endowment is, but I'm guessing it's massive. So if all these people doing it, it's just a matter of time. Let's use an example of, let's say there's a football school that seats 80,000 in their stadium, and now due to governor's restrictions, they're going to seat 30,000 in the stadium. That could be 20 million, and that's huge. So what we as administrators need to do what we need to do for administrators is get data in front of them. We're 6 sports with one infrastructure. You want to be able, as track coaches, to take the emotion out of the decision. You want to be able to give information to administrators where it is black and white, it's objective data. We are absolutely bang for your buck in terms of 6 sports, one infrastructure. And that's important to know because those are 6 NCAA sports. So when administrators are looking at that, if they're looking and going through this based on emotion, their husband might play tennis. Their wife might play golf. You might play in a softball league or a baseball league. But we need to get them, so there may be an emotional connection there. We need to take emotion out of decision making and put objective data in front of them. So maybe our Coaches Association should hire a PR firm to get that message out to college administrators, to board of directors, to board of regents. We truly are the best value in order to get 6 sports for the Division I level. And we need to be proactive. Coaches need to have those conversations with their administrators. And it's, I could rant on this for hours, but it's something we have to do as a body. And I don't know how we do it, but it has to happen.
So, Joe, I want to take a step back on this because you're talking about this proactivity and I think looking at the schools that have been cut, I mean, you and I had talked about Brown, and you made a comment about how that was kind of a shocking decision that you saw. So I just want to understand what you're seeing there to maybe demonstrate the severity of the situation and why that was such a surprise.
Well, I think when you look at Brown, and again, I don't know what their endowment is, their financial situation. I'm guessing it's significant. So if you have a university like that making tough decisions, for us as coaches to think that we're not immune to this, we are absolutely naive to think that we're not immune. And here's who's immune. Basketball, football, women's basketball, and probably volleyball. they're pretty much immune. Everybody else is going to get looked at. That's the reality of the world.
Joe,
I'm starting to turn red. I'm getting all fired up.
Joe, real quick, I want to just kind of level set for everyone listening. We, a lot of times when we talk about sports getting cut, we reference number of sports, and we reference like number of scholarships, right? So I just want to make sure we understand. So say, portraying track and field and cross country as 6 sports, we're waving that flag as something really great. Is that just because of the lens for the athletic director that, hey, this gives us 6 sports and it puts us at that threshold of being a Division One program? I'm wondering what is the numbers game here that, like, we've heard multiple coaches talk about this, like, hey, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. But can you explain to our audience why it's so important to have that many sports?
Okay, so let's just think about this. Let's say you're at 19 sports and the number is 16 you need to be at. So let's look at this. Let's say you're 19 and you have a choice between cutting cross country, indoor, and outdoor. There's 3 sports. You already have men's and women, or you already have women's indoor, cross country, and outdoor. So you already have a coaching staff. You already have a budget. You already have infrastructure. So you're looking on the table. You got tennis, golf, and baseball. Let's use that as for the sake of argument. Don't know what baseball coaching staffs are. I'm guessing it's 4, 3 to 4. Golf is going to be 2. Tennis is going to be 2. Right there, the math is done. If you make it an objective decision, track stays, the other sports go. Easiest thing to do. Why is Southwest Airlines successful and has been for so many years? They work on one plane. Their infrastructure is based on one situation. They don't have multiple levels of jets. They don't have multiple levels of different mechanics working on different things. We don't have, this is one 6 sports. And we have to continually get that to administrators.
Joe, I get worried when we start, sometimes it's like, hey, we need to hang on to this sport and that sport so we, maintain Division I level. But in the Central Michigan case, right, they just dropped 2 of their men's sports, but it sounded like they were going to appeal to the NCAA to remain Division I status, although they didn't hit that specific threshold. What happens if the NCAA starts allowing programs to go beneath that threshold and they stop enforcing, schools to have that 14 varsity sport threshold? If they start allowing, schools to go under that threshold, what's stopping them from cutting track and field and all these more not power or for-profit sports? Right.
So I think that you look at where we are logically. Will the NCAA deny that waiver? Probably not. We're in a pandemic. This pandemic is probably going to go on for 18 months, maybe, or some levels of pandemic. So I could see these waivers being granted. Now let's take this 3 steps further. We also have to be wary of how is this going to affect limitations. Maybe they change the NCAA requirements for Division I. Maybe now it's only 5 sports for men and 8 for women. So you have to think, not only is it bad now, but what could happen in the future? Because you also have this fly in the ointment that is going to get at some point thrown into this, which is image and likeness. So you have another pot of money that could go away. So we as coaches got to be proactive. How would we do that? Don't we try to make it all conferences have required sports. Figure out a way to get to your AD. Can field cross country as a required sport within our conference on the men's side. Quite honestly, women are going to be tough to get rid of just because it offsets football. So maybe at a school that doesn't play football, but if they're playing even non-scholarship football, you still have to offset the football numbers. The only sports that can do that, rowing and cross country and indoor and outdoor. Period. No other sports can do it. And not everybody has water. We're in the desert.
And Joe, I have a comment on two things you said. One, and really it's a point of clarification for people. The point about getting this information to, administrators, the lens that some of them are looking at this is, hey, I have to cut a number of sports. I can make one decision and cut 3 sports. Your point is that you cut 3 sports, but you have 3 sports that still have the infrastructure of the 6. So you're not really alleviating the full financial burden of cutting those sports. The school's still carrying that, right? Right.
Absolutely. And I don't know what the base. You're exactly right.
I think that's an important point for people to understand, because, when we had Beth on the show, one of the things she said, and that got really, caught fire under coaches, was this elevator pitch to administration, right? Like, what should we be saying to our administrators? And I think that's important to understand. It's not just that, hey, we're 6 sports. To some administrators, that's maybe a negative, right? So it's 6 sports that is supported by one infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah. You are right. And that's what we have to do. And it's not something you need to go beat down your AD's door. But I am going to tell you, what have we lost now? 7 in the last, of various people cutting sports, may not be track, but maybe 7 schools in the last 10 days have started cutting sports. This is going to continue. It's been going on for years. There's no money right now. It's going to keep on going. So it's important for us to get to our administrators and just have this conversation and be real. Hey, I know you're going to have to make decisions. I'm naive to think that you're not going to. Here's what we do for you. Here's what we do. We are 6 sports, 1 infrastructure. And that is you can sell that till the cows come home. And then you think at our travel schedule. Right now the NCAA requires 4 cross-country meets, 4 indoor meets, 4 outdoor meets. That ain't very much. That's 12 competitions plus your conference championships over the course of a year. So I like to think about this is, many years ago, I went through cancer. And the goal was take the white, survive. Take the survive and flourish again. That's what we as a sport have to do, is survive so we can flourish. We might not survive the way we want to for a couple of years, but eventually we'll be able to blossom.
So it's kind of how to get through this.
Literally you're exactly right. And that's when we went through these cuts 2.5 years ago. My whole goal was just to keep track, just to keep men's cross country and indoor and outdoor. Didn't care how it survived, as long as it survived. You Mr. or Mrs. Administrator, you tell me what the rules of the game are, and we will figure it out. Just keep us alive.
Joe, I'm curious, why are schools choosing track and field then? You mentioned the upside of keeping it because it is a numbers game, but are administrators looking at it from a number of sports perspective, or are they looking at it from a cost perspective? Is track and field and cross country inherently more expensive than another sport that also was on the chopping block, like swimming or golf or tennis?
I think if you're cutting multiple sports, let's say you're getting rid of one sport, then track and field is probably more expensive. But if you have to get rid of 3 men's sports, I'm willing to go, especially if you have men's or women's cross country, indoor and outdoor. You're already going to the same meets. You have the same coaches. You have the same trainers. You have the same academic support. Now you take fencing, rifle, and golf. Different coaching staff, different travel schedule, different trainers. So from a fiscal sense, if you just get down to the nuts and bolts, there is it makes no sense to cut men's and women's indoor outdoor cross country, because one, you have to maintain NCAA membership. And how do you do that in these times the least expensive way? It's by keeping those 6 sports and looking at other things. However, why do I think it is happening now? It is an emotional decision, not an objective decision.
I want to read something real quick that was passed along to me. So this is the Akron, their breakdown of operating expenses by team, and this was sent to me after the men's program was cut. The operating expense per participant for the track and field team, and this is combined men and women's, which it was about. Looks like it's about 126, I should say. I think it says. And actually, as I'm looking at it, I think the men's team, the average cost per participant was about $1,500, and the average cost for the women's was about $1,900 per participant. The next closest expense on the men's side was soccer, and their per participant operating expense was $7,900, and
Wow.
on the women's side, it was women's soccer at $5,900.
Wow.
So it just as it kind of points to what you're saying around the financials, where if you're looking at bang for the buck and efficiency, and again, we're looking at one school, one example. But the discrepancy between that is huge. Basketball, for example, on this list is $47,000 per participant for the men, $25,000 per participant on the women's side.
And what would be nice for track coaches to do is never compare themselves to basketball or football. It's absolutely pointless to do that. So worry about soccer, baseball, golf, tennis. Because again, like I said before, that is a battle you will never win. So you're just wasting time. Embrace it. It is what it is. And try to figure out how you can survive. Because there are going to be cuts.
I have a little tidbit I'd like to toss in about one of the other schools we talked about, Brown. And just as a note, this is from our friend Jonathan Galt. He tweeted that Brown, before these cuts, had 38 varsity sports, the third highest in the NCAA. And it's interesting that of those 38 sports, what was the domino that fell that made them target track and field? Because they have other sports that, like we talked about, they have fencing, they have equestrian, equestrian, golf, rowing. So it's like, okay, like you talked about, was it an emotional decision? Are we in a position where, like, again, athletic departments have this weird agency and this wiggle room where they can make these calls now that they feel like they can? Because on paper, why would you cut track and field? If you have 38 sports, why did track and field rise to the top?
Well, I think there's probably something
you'd have to go out of your way to do it.
You would, but let's take it a step further. You just mentioned, I think, equestrian. Is that right?
Correct.
At Brown? Almost willing to bet that there may be a significant donor. And an Ivy League school that could be millions and millions of dollars that is attached to equestrian. There is probably a significant donor that is attached to tennis there or some other sport. And are we, there are track and cross country people as a whole. We're used to going to road races and doing things and complaining about a $40 road race fee. Money talks. If you are at, State University of Podunk, but you know what? You're worth $50 million and you love your track team. You better endow it now. Because what we as a track society think, just because I did this, my bosses are going to listen, or not, the decision makers are going to listen to me. No, your decision makers are going to listen to you if you did this and you gave money, huge amounts. That's the way the world works. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it works in our sports.
And I'll play devil's advocate here, just to defend our friends with equestrian. They also have fencing and squash. Alex, you forgot them. I say that jokingly, but on one hand, I mean, I'm thinking, maybe there's a fencing podcast out there having the same conversation about their sport on the line, right? And for them,
is it on flow fencing?
It is. I don't know if we've launched that one yet, but.
Well, you might want to. It's an emerging.
The thing about, like you start comparing yourself with other sports, and I think this is where, Joe, what you say is relevant for everybody. You have to take emotion out of it and opinion out of it and back things by fact. Because if I'm someone on the squash side and I hear a track and field guy say, "Hey, why are you cutting track and field? Why don't you cut squash?" I'd be saying, "Well, shit, we barely have any opportunity as it is, and now you want to get rid of us altogether, right?" At least you can go somewhere else and run track.
Right, you're right.
Right.
But think about track. But think about track as a whole. We just mentioned 3 sports. We are very different. We embrace all types of people, all types of socioeconomic backgrounds, all types of everything. You just 3 sports that are not accessible to a lot of the population, right? I mean, it's just not accessible. So why is that? So there are ADs are going to make dollar decisions, and if you're going to ostracize a donor that has given you $10 million with the potential to name a building in 10 years, you're not going to do that. You're going to take a shot at the apathetic, the people that don't do a lot. And one of the things that you have to do is you can't be hitting your AD and asking for things all the time. You just can't do that. Fly under the radar. How many
So don't ask
times have we seen this?
Don't ask for a brand new indoor 300-meter facility anytime soon.
No, you do. But here's the way you ask it. You go to the football coach, and you get him to ask for it.
Right.
Because more than likely, the football coach, what the tenure is on a football coach, 5 years, 6 years. So you get somebody else to do it for you. You don't do it. You say, this is going to help your football team.
Is that rule of college sports sales? When you're selling, get someone else to sell for you. That's good. So, Joe, so I guess just kind of buttoning up this part of the conversation, and I'm kind of glad I threw out the squash fencing thing, because it allowed you to well, in a serious way. I mean, again, it's about knowing the facts and the details, but it did kind of highlight another piece of what track and field provides to universities and what you responded with. And I think, again, it points back to the conversation we had with Beth at Tennessee about understanding the value of your sport and being able to have that conversation in a non-emotional way with your administration, so they can look at it objectively, and when they have to make decisions, they understand the benefits. I think that's
Right.
that's hopefully what
You're
people
exactly
understanding.
Right. And you want to get them to take emotion out of it. And all you have to do, you don't have to be loud about it. You don't have to go to the media. You don't have to do overt acts. Just give them data. Let them know what's happening. So when we went through cuts here, of something that people don't know is we book over 4,000 room nights a year in the city. That is a huge economic impact. 4,000 rooms, and that's just with what we track. But little things like that. So if you're at If you're at one of those schools that hosts major indoor meets, get the local convention center's visitors bureau behind you. Get those people that are coming in and spending money in your hotels. Because here's the reality of it. If you're at State U and you're processing through, let's just say 4,000 athletes a year during indoor season, you helping your budget and your team's budget, but the city and the local government, without that, if you have a squash match, what do they have? 3 people in a hotel? I mean, it's not even the same. And I love squash. I'm not even sure what it is. I've had it for dinner before, but I haven't played the game. So it's make yourself relevant not only to your AD, but we have so much to offer.
So I want to kind of go a step further here. You know, we're talking a lot about the benefits of the sport and how to communicate that and being proactive about it, but how the other part of this is financial, right? So there's still a financial piece people are going to look at. Is there a way to be proactive about how to cut your own budget or be more thoughtful and efficient in your spending? Like how can track and field and how can programs on an individual basis, but also the kind of sport at the NCAA level at a whole?
I think, let's be real. We're going to probably have across the board, this is just a guess, 10 to 25% budget cuts across the country. You have to realize what you need versus what you want. And that's what you have to present to your athletic directors, because I can guarantee you sports are going to sit there and say, I want. What do we need in track and field? We don't need shiny things. We don't need gadgets. We need massage therapists. We need shoes. We need good people. People don't cost a lot of money because they're already working there. That's what we need. We don't need to go and say, I want a new locker room. We really need to get new pole vault pits. Well, maybe we do need to get but we can survive another year. We could survive another 2 years. What's imperative and what's not. And just take it a step back. Because what you're going to see is you're going to see other coaches that push. And that eventually will bite them.
What's a few examples that you feel like would be pretty universal for programs that is a need versus a want? And I'm not saying a want that's like a silly want that's like, right. We want everyone to have a brand new garment. Like, what's an actual want that might be relevant for a school that isn't maybe quite a need?
See, I don't. Well, I'll look at it. We have 2 Alter Gs. I was trying to get another one. Do I really need one? I mean, not really. It's not that important. So if I need new poles, our poles are getting old. They're a little brittle. I need to make that's a safety issue. So do you have to compete every weekend? So there's some schools out there that compete every weekend. Do you actually need to do that? Or do you want to do that? I personally need an emotional downtime. If I need that, then that means a student needs that. So we're pretty much every other week team, except during indoors when we host indoor meets, but then our kids are pretty much every other week, even though we're competing there. So can you do things to save a lot of money? Do you need to take 70 people to Mount Sacazuza, Long Beach? Maybe you take 30 and make it something that kids are proud to go on, and it's not a free-for-all. Those are things that you have to look at.
Joe, you were mentioning, schools needing to fly under the radar of their AD a little bit and finding ways, the needs and the must-haves and kind of creating a much leaner budget, essentially. But I want to reference some of the schools that might be cringing, a coach or two who might be cringing hearing you say those words, because let's just face it, like you are a coach who comes to the table with a little leverage. You have 2 national titles on your shelf, but you came from Butler and a school. There's some schools in that conference in the Big East right now that probably fall into that bracket of programs that are just barely getting by. And there's probably a few coaches out there that are sweating the idea of trying to lean out their program even more and eventually becoming the next victim of a Central Michigan or an App State or an Akron. Like, what is your message to those coaches who are already scraping by and who are trying to basically avoid the axe already?
Well, I think when you're at a school, a Big East school, I'm not sure if any of them play any type of scholarship football. I guess they do. I think Villanova and Georgetown may play some level of scholarship football, but the others, there may be more of a participation football. So you've got to make yourself 6 sports, 1 infrastructure, and a lot of those schools, track and field is an arm of the admissions office. So if you are at State University private liberal arts school, if you need to get to 70 people to make yourself relevant, get to 70 people to make yourself relevant. Well, you might say, well, that's too many for me. Well, again, what's the goal? The goal is to survive. Survive, and then it can change. If you don't survive, you're dead. You survive, you can change and slowly get back to where you wanted to. So when I was back years ago, when I was at Butler, track and cross country was essentially an arm of the admissions office. We had goals to bring in kids every year, and our goals were we wanted to have super successful kids on the track, and we had some decent success there. But we also had numbers on the team, and we also had alums that donated a significant amount of money during our time there because they gave back because of their experience. So I would say to those coaches, 1, make sure, without beating down the door, just subtly over months and months, make sure people know your 6 sports. And you're counting, when they're checking the box at the end of the year and doing it for sports sponsorship at the beginning of the year, you always want there to be 6 NCAA countable sports within 1 infrastructure.
So the ideas we've touched on are around schools communicating, right? Our programs communicating to their administration, programs figuring out what they actually need, becoming a little bit leaner to survive through this, right? How many of us have gone into our ADs and said, prior to the budget cut even coming, and saying, hey, I think I can save this much money? Willing to bet it's not happening. I think I can do this. I think I can help this. Be proactive. They're going to look at you and think, wow, this guy is trying to do something for the greater good, or this woman's trying to do something for the greater good, and not just thinking about themselves. So how do we take that idea outside of just individual programs and bring that to the sport as a whole at the NCAA level?
Well, I think,
is there a way coaches can come together to do that collectively?
Well, we have a coaches association, and quite honestly, I think they need to hire a PR firm to get the word out to administrators. That's why the association exists, to do what the constituency asks of them. And this is not a time to sit back and relax. And sit back and watch. This is a time where we have to be proactive with kid gloves. So let's take this a step further. So a lot of universities they make hires in ADs, basketball, football coaches. There's different search firms. There's different people that come in and do studies. The consultants that are out there that may get a call from an AD, they need to know this. these guys need to know this. These women also need to know this, so that when Ryan Fenton and Associates is talking to State University X, Ryan Fenton and Associates says, hey, I know you might love golf because you play golf every day. You love tennis because your friends play tennis. Let's show you the numbers. And if people get information and then they make the decision, oh well, at least they had the information. At least you tried. You can't say they weren't informed. When people make uninformed decisions, that's where we are going to typically get in trouble.
Is there yeah, and how does that work? Like, what's the process there with the Coaches Association? Is that something that the coaches and the constituents come together and say, hey, this is what we need? Is that something the association is, like, your thought is they should be proactive about? Like, what's the actual step forward in those initiatives?
Well, I think one of the first things to do would be probably to talk to the executive committee, get the executive committee to talk to the people in New Orleans, and then the people in New Orleans, if they're charged with doing it, that's their job. Don't say, let's sit back and wait and see. It's going to be too late. There is no sitting back. We have at least 18 months of this, because we have this budget year, and state budgets right now are getting revamped within their state legislative systems. Those state budgets are going to trickle down to state universities. Those state universities are going to have to make decisions within their own programs, from anthropology to squash. Squash. But those are things that are going to have, those decisions at some places are going to have to be made. So that's why we have to get our association to get the word out proactively. Because this is not a short-term thing. Because now we have to rebound economic recovery. You're still going to have the same budget problems in 2021, 2022. Maybe by the mid-2023, you're getting out of it. And if you're not getting out of it, college sports may look significantly different.
We've talked about with a few coaches the formats of competition and how that can be helpful or hurtful in some ways to budgets. I mean, where do you see is there an improvement that can be made during this time to help in how competition is structured, whether it's the qualifying systems or the structure of the season or whatever that might be?
Well, I think you have to look at what the minimums you need, not what the maximums you need. So we're in a unique situation here where we're 400 miles from the next university. So we have to fly places. We could get to four places driving semi-comfortable. In a 6-hour radius in Philadelphia, what do you have? I have no clue. 700 schools. We have 4 or 5. So I think we have to, again, do you need to run a cross-country meet every weekend? Probably not. Do you need to run an indoor track meet every weekend? Probably not. Do you need to run an outdoor track meet every weekend? Probably not. So you have to pick and choose what you're going to do in order, because you can make budget cuts. All of us could make 20% budget cuts within reason and not feel a change. I was speaking to my administrator the other day, and I said, just tell me what the rules of the game are and we'll make it work. You're not worried, Joe? Nope, not worried at all. Because I'm not. We'll make it work.
In talking with some of the coaches there, there's some events that are at the NCAA level are funded by NCAA for teams to be there. There's some that are not funded for teams to be there. I think I don't know how indoor, there's obviously not a regional. Cross country there is, track there is.
Yeah, that may be an indoor regional. I think that was getting pushed last year. Fiscally, that may be the dumbest thing that we could even ask for right now. That's just not smart.
Because that's an event. If it's added, it's a new event that you're forced to go to. And do schools in that situation, would schools have to pay for it?
They would. They would. Let's look at the NCAA outdoor region. Now you're going to get me on another tangent. If our track coaches could go to their administrators and say, hey, I'm going to save you $200,000 like that. In this time right now, they may do cartwheels. They may be thrilled. I think we need to look at the outdoor region and get rid of it for 2 years. Go to a descending order list. You can still have an east descending order list, a west descending order list. Take 8 from the east, 8 from the west, and 8 from the remaining national list. You get the same patterns. You get the same time schedules. You've cut 2 weeks out. You've cut stayover money out. I've talked to a significant number of Power 5 coaches. I have not heard one person that's not for that. Some may say the small school may not be for that. The coach may not be. But if you tell the administrator you're going to save them $25,000, they are going to be thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. And that's something we could do right now. Say, hey, let's do this for 2 years. May not be ideal, but let's do it for 2 years because this whole thing's hurting everybody. For me to go to the regional and be in either Sacramento or Austin or Kansas with the stayover money, with the flights, it's a huge amount of money. For us, we're probably $55,000, $60,000. We're nothing compared to some schools that are qualifying 75 people. We're not even in the ballpark. So if that coach goes to those administrators and says, hey, I can save you $300,000, they are going to be thrilled. And it's not going to affect those that are at the championship. The top are going to be there. Our coach, Dr. Rich Cerrone, has done numerous studies. Under any system you choose, regional, descending order list, the people that are scoring are the people that are scoring. It is rare that an outlier comes out and scores. Rare.
Joe, just a level set.
That's rant number 2.
And I think we can all. Why do you think? Why
can you do this? Like, can you
what's
put little
the
things on that rant number 1, rant number 2?
Little chalk. Okay, so can we level set? Why do we have a regional system right now? We put it in place because what? Is it so that everyone has an equal playing field opportunity on one single weekend? Like, how do we justify it? How did we justify it in the first place?
Well, I think we justified it in the first place was actual head-to-head competition getting in. And my argument because people don't have access to big meets, access to go to the Texas relays to long jump, or access to go to Azusa Pacific to run a 1500. I was at a school, Butler, and we didn't have anything. Our budget was terrible. You still found a way to do it. It's about choices. So a coach that has a budget of virtually nothing and says, I just can't get there. Yeah, you can. You just got to figure out a way. Have the glass half full, not half empty, because you can get it done. Sure, you may have to cut something over here to get it done, but you could get that great long jumper to a meet. You may be able to get them to 3 meets. So I think it was a little bit of access, and it was a little bit about running head-to-head competition. But you guys have been to the regionals. A lot of times it's a jog fest. Most people make it through. Occasionally you'll get an outlier that makes it through, 1 or 2. The relays, it'll happen because inevitably somebody 1 or 2 people drop a baton or they get tangled up. And it may have been the number 1 seed in the country, and they're literally just trying to get the stick around. That's all they're trying to do. They're not trying to run fast. They're trying to not mess up, and something ends up happening. So I don't know why it happens. I hate the meet. It's miserable. It's not fun. There's nothing. And we've had kids that have run their way into it. We've also have had kids not run their way into the national championship. It's just not a fun meet. So
it almost sounds like Joe, it almost sounds like this regional, you could argue that it dilutes the competition more because, like we mentioned, the kids who are going to score at NCAAs, they're going to make them beat regardless. But regionals sets up a situation where, like you mentioned, they might trip, they might fall, they might lose a baton, and now our top athletes are actually getting kicked out. So it might dilute the competition.
Well, people would argue either way. But in this time, it's about saving money. This is a non-funded event. So I don't know if you've been reading, some schools are getting their kids off campus earlier around Thanksgiving. They're sending kids home because of the pandemic. So this fits in line with what everybody is doing. We can cut our season 2 weeks short. We can get kids back to their families. We can save incredible amounts of money. I think that I've talked to at least 12 Power 5 coaches. There has not been one person opposed to this.
So your recommendation is not only getting rid of the regional, but almost essentially moving the national to where the regional took place, getting the
Absolutely.
season done sooner so kids can get home, and
it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win for public safety. It's a win-win for the NCAA. They're going to save money because they're not going to have to host 2 regionals. It is now the people that are not going to be happy with that are the timing companies. They're going to lose 2 events. It's a win for the universities. It's a win for coaches. We actually have 2 weeks more of our life back because we go. We don't have a ball in our sport where we have seasons. Our season goes from August to June 9th and then the Olympic trials. It's a positive all the way around. Now, will we be smart enough to think outside the box? I don't know. That's literally, in some cases, the $300,000 question.
So I want to ask about the Power Fives, right? Because you said some of the coaches you've talked to aren't against it. At the same time, based on the conversations we've had, those are the schools that are most protected, right? They're most of them that we've talked to said they're not at risk right now. Their universities can probably handle a year of even if football doesn't happen in some cases. Right. So going back to your let's like stay under the radar here and not be a voice at all. What's their incentive to go tell their university they can save them even more money when the university's already said, hey, we'll be okay this year? And essentially get them to advocate for something like this.
All right, so let's say you're in a state that right now is not allowing large gatherings. So this is not going to be an NCAA decision. This is going to be a state decision. And now you can't play a football game with your 80,000 people in it. Maybe you have to go on the road every time. That's a possibility. Or maybe you're limited to 20,000 people. Again, at some point, we are naive to think that we are not immune. I wouldn't even go there. I've heard some stories about some universities that their schedule may change drastically because of potential budget crunches. And these are schools with lots of money. So if we sit there with our head in the sand and wait and see, we're going to be in trouble. And if that's just, I think people are naive to think that. And I hope I'm wrong. But I don't think the reality that we're in. How many people applied for unemployment now? Is it 42 million? Is it 22 million or is it 42 million? It's a lot, right?
It's over 40. Yep.
That's a lot of people. Are they going to want to buy a $100 football ticket? Can they buy a $100 football ticket? You watch it on TV and don't go to the game.
So this idea of the regionals, right? I think we've talked to a few folks about this.
Are we on cross country or track?
This is track, right? And this is around the budget conversation, right? Because it seems like that there's a lot of sense that's made with how do we save some money for schools, for the NCAA, right? So all that stuff seems to make sense. The question I have is, the school year is about to, we're really supposed to be ending the current school year. So I want to say the school year is going to start soon, but it's not that far away, right? And how quickly does that conversation need to happen, and how does it need to happen for coaches to be able to say, because, and again, the timeliness is not really as much about, hey, let's fix outdoor and it's a year away. It's about how do we equip coaches in a way to say to their universities, here's a huge cost savings I can provide, because it's a great idea, but this is a big decision that has to be made, it seems like, amongst the NCAA committee, the coaches association, right?
Right.
Or can that be made quickly?
I would argue it could come from the conferences. If the Mountain West gets together and says, hey, there's 10 coaches that are for this and one that's against this, we as a conference we need to look at this. Because again, let's not be naive to think that the NCAA is not trying to figure out how to way to save money. They absolutely are. They're charged every day with saving money because they just blew through all kinds of money to stay afloat. It's just what everybody in the world, in every industry, is doing. They're going into their reserves. So, in my opinion, it needs to go from conferences to the NCAA because that's the voice directly that happens. And if there's a small conference on the Northeast that says, "Hey, this is a good deal," we ought to do this. If there's a major conference on the West Coast or the South, we need to look at this. But again, I'm one guy with lots of rants. It's been 11 weeks.
Well, but this, I think this is an important one, because it seems like it's one that actually has a benefit to a lot of people in terms, and again, like you said, maybe this is a 2-year thing to get through our current situation, right? So if you had to recommend,
what's the premise all along? Survive.
Right. So what's the recommendation for steps for people to take? Is it to get conference coaches together to voice this to the conference, to then voice to the NCAA, or if a coach is listening to this, what do they do?
I would talk to your peers within your conference and get the pulse. If there's a majority within your conference that's a direction you want to go, would talk to your conference liaison, get your ADs once the conference gets involved in it. Then it'll come from the conference to the NCAA. This is not a legislation issue. This is a championships qualifying issue. So those decisions can be made from Competition Oversight Committee. That could happen from the finance working group within the Competition Oversight Committee. And then they charge the championships, track and field championships committee with, hey, this is what we've thought about. Obviously, you involve them in everything. And I've been very transparent about this. I own this. It's something that I think is positive, especially in this time of uneasy finances. And I have no problem saying I think personally this is the best thing to do for a 2-year period. It saves everybody a fortune. And maybe it saves somebody's job, which is most important.
So for maybe there's a few folks out there that's, they hear this. They also hear Joe Franklin say, I hate the regional meet. Is this a way that he's just trying to get? I know, but that's some. I could see some thoughts saying, "Hey, is this just a way for us to without really having the conversation in all coaches' opinion, get rid of this regional meet that, as I think most people know, regionals at every level. There's some people that love it. There's some people that hate it. There's some people that think it should be modified. Is this a hidden way to just do away with a system that someone doesn't like? Or is this really about budget and the survival that we're talking about? I just want to
I'll tell you how much. And I don't like the regional. Didn't really think about it. I actually don't think about how to get rid of the regional. It's not something that I I had a lot of time on my hands the last 11 weeks, so I could have. But then we started talking about budgets and budget cuts. And I thought, well, maybe I could get it to where I don't actually have to take a budget cut. How would I do that? Here's where we're spending the most money. We can get the exact same outcome and spend $50,000 to $60,000 less. And the kids could have 2 weeks more of their life. And that happened probably 7 weeks ago. Then I started to look at universities that have now cut their fall semesters to going home at Thanksgiving. Well, now it even makes more sense. You're going to get your kids home earlier. So yes, I don't like it. And again, we've had kids make it from the regionals, and we've had kids not make it from the regionals. So I've had both sides. But now this is you start looking at things differently. How could you simply do it and still get the exact same result? And so that's why I was like, well, this is easy. East, West, 8 and 8. You have regional representation, and then you have event quality representation on the 8 at large. I just thought it was simple. It's like the guy who invented Kleenex. It was just easy. Just all of a sudden he decided, hey, this is Kleenex. I got really thin paper. I'm going to blow my nose.
I like this. All right. So just to be clear from what you're saying, this is not an underlying, hey, I want to get rid of regionals because I don't like it. It's how do we cut money? And after your thought is, let's do this for 2 years, get through this, and after 2 years, you don't really care if there's a regional or there's not a regional. Your goal is to get through what we're currently dealing with.
Right. Now let's take it a step further. Maybe in 2 years the constituency likes it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they say, hey, let's keep it the same. Now you always have to be careful what you wish for. Because the NCAA said, hey, you made it work. You're keeping this. You've saved us a boatload of money. Institutions have saved a boatload of money. So you always have to be careful what you wish for. But maybe the constituency says yes. Maybe the constituency says no. But if 150 people want it and our 150 want the old regional and 75 want the new way, well, you know what? Regardless of my opinion and what I think, the majority has spoken. Oh, well, we're going back to regionals. And then you make it work.
Joe, I'd like to take this a little higher and get out of kind of the nuances of our specific sport. And because of the current climate, even today we've seen there was a report from CBS Sports that came out, and essentially it was quoting numerous athletic directors and the consultancy firms. And numerous people are making the assumption that there is a very high likelihood that the Power 5 schools will eventually break away from the NCAA. What is the validity of that? How much have you heard those rumors in your circles? A, and B, how could we create a new system for track and field that might actually be proactively better for our sport?
About Power 5 breaking off, I don't have any knowledge, and it would all just be me making crap up. I don't. That's way
rant
above.
number 3 is not on this topic. It sounds like
that would be like me talking about how to fix my electrical outlet in my house. I don't have any clue, so I'm not going to have an opinion. So I think whenever you're dealing with huge amounts of money, there's always a possibility of severe change. So that's, again, let's not be naive. If people aren't being able to, and college football right now is a little bit of a unique entity because it's, the bowl system isn't through the NCAA, so they're not really part of the NCAA in that regard. So it's just a little different structure. So I can't talk on that. And as far as going towards how do we make our sport better, yeah, I think what we've learned over the last 11 weeks is digital platforms and snippets. I didn't even know what TikTok was until 8 weeks ago. But for TikTok to get so many views and so
You're
many
dancing now.
people, no, I don't, but I do occasionally laugh at people that do. So, but we have to start thinking about our sport differently. Those that want to go back to the 1960s and run a dual meet, that ain't getting anybody in the stands. Not going to happen. It's just the reality of the world. Everybody's on their phone. So you have to make things fast, 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 fast. Initially, I'll give you an example. I'm going to talk about my wonderful wife, Mindy, and we just realized it was our anniversary 2 days ago. Right, Mindy? 2 days ago. So one of the first times that we went away, we went to the USATF indoor meet at Atlanta, Georgia, and she hadn't been to a lot of track meets, and she had not been to a championship level track meet. She was miserable because of the dead. Absolutely miserable. I'm miserable with dead time. I don't understand why there's 10 minutes between a 1,500 meter race. The race is 4 minutes if it's tactical. Why do we need 10 minutes? That's one of the reasons why I love the meets at a zoo. They're bang, 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 bang. Those 1,500s are arguably some of the best mid-level 1,500s in the world. So I think initially you got to shorten the schedule. How do you shorten the schedule? By cutting out a lot of time. And you can cut out a lot of time. That's probably the quickest way to keep people interested. But going back to the dual meet, no interest ain't going to happen.
Condensify.
Yep. Now I will backtrack just a little bit. Traditional dual meet, USC, UCLA, that's got to go on forever. But to go, things like that, the Harvard Yale dual meet, if there is such a thing, those things need to continue to happen. For New Mexico to go run against UTEP at a dual meet, it's not happening. And there might be 6 people in the stands.
So you're down with historic significance, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you have those things that have gone on for 70, 100 years, absolutely. When you're trying to create something, it's not going to happen. Not in the culture that we're in.
I want to ask one thing. This is a little bit of a backtrack from something you had mentioned about, kids going home after Thanksgiving and universities not having kids on campus after that holiday. As people are hearing that, and and I'll speak for me, when I see that, my first question is, are kids going to come back at all for the spring semester? We just had a season where indoor track was canceled, outdoor track was then canceled. If kids go home and they don't come back, are winter sports at risk, or what's the conversations around schools' decisions around kids on campus after the fall?
I think that's you can't even really speculate. You got to be prepared for everything because you don't know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen in Austin, Texas in a week from now. We just got back off of Memorial Day weekend. I'm sure there were thousands of people at that lake in Austin. What's going to happen in 15 days? Maybe nothing. Maybe you see a massive spike. So I don't know. I think it's just you got to be ready for everything. I think kids will come back. I think kids want to be in school. I know I want to have interaction with my peers. And I'm 52 years old. I can't imagine what it's like to be 22 years old and stuck in a room by yourself. Can't even imagine it. We're slowly. I'm on the downhill side. They're still climbing.
But so do you know, I know New Mexico hasn't made any announcements like this about the, kids going back, but the schools that have, do you have any clarification on once they go back, they're going back for the rest of the year, and second semester is online classes?
I don't know that. I haven't heard and I haven't read anything like
Okay.
that. So I can't speculate at all on anything about that.
Gotcha.
I would think that they would want people in class if at all possible. So I think Purdue was one of the first universities that came out that said we are going back to school. I'm guessing that they have 4 or 5 alternative plans in case something goes differently. But their goal, like just about everybody, is to have people in the classroom.
Well, one more question that I have, and this is kind of switching gears. We're talking a little bit about winter now, the future season of indoor and outdoor. I want to look to one more future season, and that is cross country in 2021. We had Dave Smith on the show a few weeks ago and talked about this proposal that's out for cross country, and since that conversation, a little more has come out, not a ton, but a breakdown of potential regions for this new 5-region system, RPI system to qualify for NCAAs. And you were actually one of the schools that was brought up in our conversation, just using as an example of where you're located. So just curious to, I know you're very dialed in on the NCAA cross country qualifying system that we currently have, and curious on your thoughts on this new proposed system.
I think the committee has put in a lot of hard work. They're good people that are trying to they're getting mandated from above to make these changes. The current one that I have seen is very inequitable. If you
Can you
first of
explain
all,
what that means for people?
Sure. You have teams and conferences that are all running against each other to make it to the national championship. When you throw the Big Sky, the Pac-12, and the Mountain West in one region, it's a little bit skewed. So if you were, not a little bit skewed, it's a lot skewed. There's significant depth in those 3 conferences that tend to be in the upper echelon across all boards in distance running in the NCAA. It's not everybody, but a large portion come from those areas. And
just to be clear, this happens to be your region, correct? Your proposed region?
It does happen to be our region. However, I may argue that we're in Texas.
Okay.
I could probably figure out a way to do that. I don't really know how yet, but we'll try. So I think that, first of all, I think any change right now is just, we shouldn't even be talking about it. Our system that we have now works. It's a fixed cost. A lot of teams have already booked hotels. We know exactly where we're going. We know we're there. We know that we can, in our region, we could, in theory, drive everywhere. Not necessarily the case in the West region, but just about every other region you could drive to. This isn't going to be the case under the new proposed system that they came up with, and they've done an incredible amount of hard work. So I think the committee from above, the above committee has demanded this change without true input from its constituency. There may be a group up there that wants a change in the regionals, and I'm all for listening. I am for seeded regions. Things have to be seeded, like golf. How do you do that? That's a whole other issue. But golf, you're not having the 1, 2, 5, 8, and 9 team in the same region. It's not happening. You can't do, and it's not happening in any sport across the NCAA. What that does, though, is that's another level of cost. So is this a time where we need to be changing things that could potentially add cost? again, we've been talking about this for the last hour. No, the goal is to save money or not spend more, and that's something that we have to look at.
And in cross country, just to confirm, it's just as in track, where the regional meet is financially the burden falls on the school. It is
Correct.
the same for cross country.
It is correct. Yeah.
So this decision, from what you're saying, is a decision that increases the financial burden on schools, and they also are not really
potentially,
having a
because you're
say.
going to have to travel more. Yep, you're going to have to travel more earlier in the year to get RPI. You may not have to travel to regional, but if you have so now what you've done is you're up to 72 teams roughly, or whatever it is, 80 teams. There's a lot more players in the game. So now a team that's 120 or 140 may say, shoot, I need to go to 2 more meets. I need to go to this meet. I need to go run against New Mexico. I need to go do this. And again, coaches are going to find a way to get what they need in order to get to that regional. So I think the cost, in my opinion, will go up. The regional cost may go down, but the overall cost is going to go up.
Schools that don't go to regionals save money. Schools that do go have to spend more money.
Correct. But also those ones that are trying to get to the regional, it's not going to be the 80 teams that are trying to get to the regional. It's going to be 140 teams or 160 teams. Because now when we're getting in that level, there's a lot of parity. There's a lot of who you race and what you do. So now maybe State University of Middle America now says, hey, I need to get to the Santa Clara Bronco invite because it's going to help my RPI. And they're going to try to do that. Or else they're not doing their job.
But on the same hand, there are those schools that you're talking about, the State School in Middle America, that have easy conferences that they win every year, and their schedule is actually easier now because they don't even need to try to get into the bigger meets. They just need to win. It's literally just check a couple boxes, win conference, sweet. We're off to regionals again. So
now you have the second and third teams that may think that they can make it.
Right. And the highlight of their season used to be that they got to go to regionals. That was the best part of their sport, is that they got to run with the big dogs one time every year.
Right. So I guess the takeaway here from your perspective is it's not the proper time to be thinking about change when we're thinking about
Correct.
Going back to what we talked about. We're thinking about survival.
Right. And I'm going to read you something that our conference just came up with. So we just talked about this, and I'll read you just one sentence, as long as I can get this open. So we will be sending this to, hopefully it has to go through the proper governance procedures within our conference, but we will be sending this to, hopefully, Championships Oversight Committee. So the last sentence of the first paragraph, the last part of it says, therefore, we are requesting no changes to the current system or qualification be discussed at this time. The current
that's for just this all sports or just track and field and cross country?
That's just cross country. This is purely cross country driven because this is on the docket right now. So it's a 4-page or a 4-paragraph letter that hopefully will go out Tuesday of next week from our conference, and that's signed by every coach within the Mountain West.
Joe, it sounds like there's some pushback from the Mountain West coaches. We've heard that there's pushback from Big Ten coaches. We have yet to find someone who is for this change. So we're wondering,
how did we even get here?
And just for the record, I have asked. Because to be fair here, you're the second coach that's been on to talk about this that has not been for it. Our goal is actually present both ideas here, right?
Absolutely.
There's two sides to this, and it's important to get that right. So, PSA right here: if you are for this and you would like to talk, let us know.
Our DMs
Go
are
ahead,
open.
Joe. Yeah.
So I think you have to figure out how we got here. So let's think about. So we started off this conversation putting at some level cross country and track in the same category as equestrian, squash, and some other. Let's just throw rifle out there, right? We started off that way. So when you have a group of people making a decision, administrators, my gut feeling is they are not talking about the squash national championship on a regular basis. Is that a safe assumption?
I would
Probably
have
not
that
talking
assumption.
Probably.
All right. So the only way they get an inkling that something is perceived to be positive or negative is someone or some group has access to them. That is the only way that can happen. Because a group of people that are overseeing, I don't know how many NCAA championships there are, 20 NCAA championships, I find it hard to believe are going to sit back and say, gosh, we need to really look at cross-country regional qualifying.
You have to go out of
That
your
would
way.
be one. I would love to see the minutes of the meeting because I would be high-fiving every one of them. You guys thought about this? So again, let's be realistic. Where are we? So how did that happen? I don't know how that happened. If somebody out there has access and did that, just own it and say, I'm pushing this. This is what I want. And I got access. Because it's all about access. Somebody has had to be able to get to somebody that has access. Or a group of people. Or maybe it's a conference. I don't know. But I know in our convention 2 years ago, we voted 160-7 to not even, it was like to go to a 3-region system. So it's those that the convention weren't for it. So I'm not sure what's going on. But now because of that, the championships committee has been charged with changing it.
So at this point, I mean, it's not, from everything we've been told, it's not really anything that's going to be voted on. It's a system that's being developed as best as possible. Like you said, a lot of work is being actually put into it.
Oh,
but there's
absolutely.
not necessarily a vote that's going to happen. So it sounds like
You either
coaches like
stop it or
yourself,
it's happening.
you have to voice up, come together, and doing. And it sounds like that's your guys' attempt in the Mountain West, coming together, creating a letter from the conference that is going out, signed by all.
And going to where we have access. So we're cutting out the middle and hopefully going to have access where we need to have access. At least so our voice is heard.
What's the middle here?
Well, we're going to cut it where we will cut out our regional committee. We will cut out the Coaches Association. This is not a Coaches Association issue. This is a Mountain West Conference issue. This is going to go Mountain West Conference to hopefully the NCAA directly and hopefully to competition oversight directly. To where we have access. We can get it. I don't have access. Our conference has access.
Which it's an interesting idea to figure out how to access somebody in a day where there's social media and there's it's hard not to see things.
Yeah,
I'm going to post this and I'm going to post this
do.
and tag the person at whoever it needs to go to.
Well, I don't know. Whoever the competition oversight committee is.
Interesting. So, Joe, but I mean, this is kind of, I don't want to beat a dead horse with this thing. So I guess the question I have for you as someone that's kind of for lack of a better phrase, deep in the weeds of cross country qualifying systems. What if there was a change? Is there a change that's better than the current system we have, in your opinion? Like if you could map out your perfect
if it's not
scenario.
broken, why fix it? That's my thought. This is a completely objective qualification. Everybody in the country knows what they need to do to get to the national championship. There are no hidden agendas. I like what we have. If we were to change, and again, I'm not for change in this situation, especially during this time, it would have to be equally seeded regions. But then you have to have literally a bunch of computer scientists in a room that know distance running to be able to create a program like GolfStat or the tennis ranking system, or as our assistant coach Jimmy Butler does, he does a ranking system based off the chess ranking systems. So you have to have people that are really, really bright in things that I couldn't do. Because you don't want a bunch of people sitting in a room making a decision. You don't want that. Not in our sport.
Well, and then once we equally and distribute these regionals, right? Like we've seen them try to seed regionals in the NCAA tournament, right? It's like they name the region the Midwest region, but there's no Midwest. Kansas is in Midwest region, and then every other school is not from the Midwest region, right? So like we can tier it out by like I think at that point you don't call it regionals because that's just it's not a true statement, right? Because you guys would be traveling to wherever. You'd be trying to fly into Louisville for the Northeast Regional, even though you're from New Mexico. So that's not a regional.
Well, and you're exactly right. I spoke to our golf coach about this 2 days ago, Jill Trujillo. So she's been to, in the last couple of years, she's been to Athens, Georgia for the regional. And she's been to, I think, West Lafayette for the regional. So that you have no idea where you're going. But in order to make it fair and equitable, it's kind of the only way you can do it. And then you have the whole other side of it is, well, that's going to cost more money.
Exactly.
You got all these devils in the details, and what we have right now works. Could it be tweaked? Maybe. I don't know. Because it's worked now for, I don't know how many years, 15 years, and it haven't been that many issues. Occasionally there's an issue on the 31st team, but there's an issue on the 68th team in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Is going back to our, keep it under the radar during this time, is there a risk here of like people just getting angry about things or just disagreeing in general, and it gets to a point where to what you said earlier, Joe, is how many people are sitting in a room talking about how do we fix cross country regionals?
It's not happening.
Does this get to an administrator at a school because it's like voiced and vocal by a coach, and they're just like, you know what, here's a way we solve this. Let's just get rid of cross country, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Well, hopefully we've been proactive and said the bang for your buck and infrastructure. So when it does happen, they don't think about that.
Boom.
So the other thing that we have to think about here is this is rant number 3. One of the things that we have that we could do, so we don't know if football is going to start, right? Nobody knows that. Hopefully it does, or else there's a lot of schools in a lot of trouble. We in our sport could start October 1 and not miss a beat. You could run the same darn schedule. But nobody's being proactive in presenting that as a possibility. So don't lump us in with all fall sports. Football, soccer, volleyball, squash may be a fall sport, I don't know. But don't lump us in basketball starts October 1. They can scrimmage and play exhibition games October 1. So we could, in theory, get our season in if the others don't. But we have to be able to get that information to the decision makers.
Is it likely there would be a decision that's not a blanket decision across all sports?
I think if they end up, so I think I had 11 weeks. Yes, I think it'll be a blanket decision. However, they may start winter sports with basketball. Again, if they don't start basketball, there's a whole nother financial issue, $1 billion issue. So they got to try to start basketball. If they start basketball on October 1, we can start cross country October 1.
So it's almost looking at it's almost looking at cross country as a winter sport.
If they started to talk about let's cancel these, but again, if decision makers don't know that that's even a possibility, it will be a blanket cut. Or it could be. I would assume it would be.
So the goal there is, regardless of fall or winter sport, it's sports that start before this date, or would have to start before this date.
Correct.
Got it. So make it a blanket statement, but do it based on a date, and cross country actually might be one that can be saved. Possibly the only fall sport that can be saved.
I feel very confident we would be the only fall sport that could be saved, unless football goes to a completely different schedule. But the first priority for everybody should be football playing. We should be the biggest fans of football getting back on the field right now.
If college sports are not a fan of football at this point, then you don't
Everybody
understand.
should be.
Oh man!
And the sport, this I don't know, some sport over there that, well, we can play. Well, not if football doesn't play. You got to get football playing.
Yeah. Well, Joe, we touched on a lot of stuff today. I mean, I think overarching. This again goes back to a message that started when we spoke to Beth. Is just like programs being prepared to talk about the benefits of their program to their administrators in a non-emotional, objective way. Use the numbers. Help turn a perceived negative into a positive with facts. And don't stop with just why to keep the program, right? It's why do you keep the program as a benefit for the school? Why does our program actually make sense financially? How can we as a program save more money than you're even asking us to save? And hey, guess what? We can even start our sport later if we need to. So we're good to go.
Yeah, just tell us the rules of the game. Because our game can change if we're willing to change. And that means we survive.
Survive and flourish.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm done ranting.
Joe,
and the positive about this is my wife won't have to listen to me talk about this tonight.
This is good. We got it out. We hope she appreciates us letting you get it out. Now you guys can enjoy dinner.
My assistant coach Jade won't even
different.
talk to me anymore. So.
Well, we appreciate you talking to us. I think we have a tally of the rants. If there's more, we can always follow up
3.
at a later time. Yeah. So,
and thanks for taking time, guys, and paying attention to our sport.
Yeah. Yeah. We this is where we came from. So, some people think it's boring. This is part of life. So, but stay safe out there. Be good. We'd love to, for you to keep us involved. We can keep the viewers involved on how things develop at New Mexico, and also even some of the initiatives with the conference, some of the letters that you guys are sending out. We'd love to kind of keep up to speed with how things end up. So definitely keep us in the
Yeah,
loop.
and once
And
ours gets approved, as long as I can get it to you, I'll get it to you.
great.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, best
Take
of
care,
luck to
guys.
you guys out there. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Great to have you. So that was Joe Franklin from New Mexico, and love talking to Joe. I mean, he's got thoughts for days, and he's never afraid to share them with us, which I appreciate. Alex, the college conversations are very very topical right now, and there's partly because there's so many questions. I think you referenced the gray area more than anyone I know. So it's just college sports is deep in the gray right now. And, I think Joe's perspective on communicating with administration really follows up on what we talked about with Beth Alfred Sullivan with kind of your elevator pitch. And it's really just understanding how to speak about your sport. And if you want to bring it down to even more basic level, speaking about your job. It's no different than anyone right now going through situations and making sure that they can go to their superior and make sure they understand why they're a value to their company. So I think it's a strong message. I think I'm glad that Joe kind of resurfaced that and even brought kind of further meaning to it. And the other thing that stood out for me with what he was saying was kind of his phrase of survive and thrive. I mean, it's a personal thing for him. He talked about going through cancer and how that was his outlook. It's like, I need to survive and then I will once again thrive. Right. And with everything we're going through in all walks of life, not just sports and figuring out what date will cross country start, if it starts, we don't know how long things are going to last and what, government regulations will be and how that will affect our lives. So it's like, until there's more clarity, surviving in a way that's positive to get through the current kind of turmoil and pandemic, to come out of it on the other end in a positive way, then gives you that ability to thrive. And I think that's a really, it was a good, interesting message. And I think probably a good perspective for people to take when you're kind of weighing out all these decisions that you're trying to make during this time.
Yeah, I mean, he opened the conversation with saying, be ready for a landscape change. And so I think we have to be super nimble and agile to again, like, what is the game? What is the parameter? And he kept saying, he goes to his AD and he's like, hey, like, what are the parameters I need to fit in? And I'm going to do it. So like, let's establish those first. I think what I get worried about though is, when we start talking about, the ethos about like, 6 sports, 1 infrastructure, 6 sports, 1 infrastructure. That argument is only gets momentum when we're looking at it through the lens of that minimum viability of number of varsity sports, right? So we've talked about that a couple of times. And so again, like one of the things I'm going to keep a close eye on is these schools that are dropping sports and getting below that minimum threshold. If we drop that rule that you have to have X amount of sports to be a Division I program, that's when I start getting worried about track a lot, because then the argument of, hey, we're 6 sports under one, under one staff, doesn't matter. You're still a cost. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think we need to keep a really close eye on how the NCAA is going to rule on some of these schools who are dropping beneath that threshold, because right now our argument is totally based on that stipulation on having that minimum viability of varsity sports. And that's where our sports thrive, because again, 6 sports, that sounds great. Just tack those right on. All you need is a pair of shorts and a track. So if we lose that, we're in trouble. So how we move past that and how we set ourselves up to withstand those conversations is something that we need to keep going. And again, we want to reach out to you folks for your input. And again, the PSA is out there. We keep bragging on this new XC regional system. Who's game for this? We legitimately want to know who's game for this. What sort of school could it benefit? Like, reach out, tell me who's benefiting from this. So we want to keep those conversations going. If you're enjoying the guests that have been coming on and want to spread the word and open the conversation, open the aperture on who can be having these conversations, make sure you like, subscribe, give us a little review, and until next week, we'll see you beneath the grandstand.